I prostrate to the teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to Manjushri. Wisdom, courage. Homage to kind lineage masters. The subtle Dharma, difficult to encounter in hundreds of thousands of eons. Now I see, hear, and receive it. May I understand the true meaning of the Tathagata. To liberate all sentient beings, arouse the supreme and unsurpassed bodhicitta. Next, we will now continue studying the guidance on the preliminary practices. Now, I am talking about the 5 kinds of perfection in detail within the 5 external favorable conditions we have already covered, being born in the fortunate aeon. Now, the second condition, the Buddha has skillfully turned the wheel of Dharma as it is taught. Although the Buddha has appeared in the world, if it happens that the Buddha does not teach the Dharma or show the path, but instead abides in meditative absorption, then even though the Buddha is present in the world, the light of the authentic Dharma does not shine. In such cases, it is no different from when the Buddha has not appeared. Everyone should be absolutely clear about this. Even though the Buddha has already appeared in the world, if we happen to encounter a time when the Buddha does not teach the Dharma to sentient beings and instead abides in meditative equipoise, then although the Buddha, who is known for his supreme enlightenment and boundless compassion, has appeared in this world, manifesting as an extraordinary protector who watches over all if he truly wishes to benefit sentient beings, he must teach the Dharma, show the path, and instruct sentient beings on what to adopt and abandon. Then, sentient beings will understand the principles, uphold the precepts themselves, and practice the authentic Dharma, in this way attain liberation. But if the Buddha does not teach this principle, then it is, in truth, in essence, truly no different from us being brought forth anew, once again, in an endless and unending eon of darkness. There are some Buddhas who, although they come to this world because sentient beings lack sufficient merit, the Buddha remains in meditative equipoise for a long time. This kind of situation also occurs. Or, in some cases, at certain times, for a certain, sometimes extended period of time, the Buddha does not expound the Dharma. In such cases, sentient beings do not truly receive any genuine or lasting benefit at all, in any meaningful sense. Shakyamuni Buddha, after attaining enlightenment under the Bodhi tree in India, said, after realizing the state of perfect, complete enlightenment, this teaching can be found in the Extensive Adornment Sutra, which is also known as the Great Extensive Play Sutra. This is also specifically mentioned in that sutra, and at that particular time it was explained in this very way. As well, you see, the profound, tranquil, play-free, luminous, unconditioned Dharma I have attained. Even if I were to explain it to others, they would not understand. Therefore, I shall remain silent and abide in the forest. In fact, the Buddha, even while still on his long and arduous journey along the path to enlightenment, personally experienced and underwent 3 immeasurably countless eons, accumulating vast, immeasurable, and inexhaustible stores of merit, deep understanding, and profound wisdom. And at long last, finally, after 6 years of ascetic practice near the river, he attained full enlightenment at the sacred, historic Vajrasattva in India. At the moment of enlightenment, the Buddha said his realization was the tranquil, play-free, luminous, unconditioned Dharma. The state that is realized by the Buddha possesses 5 characteristics. First, this state is extremely profound. Profound means its essence is without form. Then it is tranquil, meaning its nature is free from all conceptualization. Play free, utterly free from all extremes of permanence. Luminous, subtly free from all extremes of nihilism. The unconditioned Dharma is utterly, truly free from all extremes of right and wrong, and so forth and so on. The Buddha had already attained this state, which possesses these 5 characteristics. It is a state like nectar, capable of curing the 84,000 afflictions. He had already attained this blissful nectar-like state of being. However, such a profound state is extremely difficult to explain to any sentient being. At that time, he felt it would be very hard for others to comprehend, because it was so deep. Therefore, he did not teach immediately, but instead quietly remained in the forest of Deer Park for a brief period of time. He was unwilling to teach others. At the very beginning, the Buddha also manifested this. Because this Dharma was so profound, he thought that among sentient beings, no one could understand it. That was his view at the time. Just as Nagarjuna Bodhisattva also said in the Jewel Garland treatises, because this Dharma is profound, he knew it would be hard for people to comprehend. Because this Dharma was so truly deep, very few people could understand it. After the Buddha attained enlightenment, reaching a profound state of understanding and wisdom, he remained silent for a period of time and did not deliver any teachings or sermons to others. This episode is also described in detail, as it is said at that particular time, the Buddha was not yet prepared to teach. If we were reborn during that period with a brief human life, though the Buddha appeared, if it happened to be within the 49 days when the Buddha had not yet begun to teach, for example, if I became a child and was born into this world during those 49 days, all other conditions might present, but Buddha had not started to teach Dharma. Would the Dharma benefit that person's mind? In fact, there would be no real benefit. So here it is said that at that particular time and in those specific circumstances, the Buddha truly did not teach the Dharma. In other words, during that period, during those 49 days, he did not give any teachings. But later, the Buddha's not teaching the Dharma was actually due to a special karmic connection from past lives. Great Brahma came before the Buddha and offered 1,000-spoked golden wheel, and Indra offered a turquoise mandala and a right-turning conch shell. Only after these supplications did the Buddha begin to teach the Dharma to those sentient beings with the right karmic connections. He first taught the Four Noble Truths at Deer Park in India, primarily to the 5 ascetics. Then gradually, at Vulture Peak and in Rajagriha, he turned the wheel of Dharma 3 times in different places. So from this reasoning, we can understand that, in essence, even if the Buddha is in the world, if he does not teach the Dharma, it is indeed very difficult for sentient beings to truly benefit in their mental continuum. In the verses we regularly recite, it is also said, the supreme refuge is the Dharma jewel. What exactly is the Dharma jewel? It is the Dharma that saves sentient beings. In order to save sentient beings, the principles of the Buddha's teachings and understanding must truly come into being and manifest within our own mental continuum in a genuine and authentic way. Once they arise, they dispel the thick darkness of ignorance and treat the afflictive diseases within our own mind stream. Therefore, when we practice now, we should not, as a general rule, at the very outset, really emphasize, like some centers advocate, skipping all preliminary practices and directly entering a very advanced state. For example, in Vajrayana, there are the highest states, such as the practices of Trekto and some practices of Togal. These practices are the highest in the entire sequence of Buddha's teachings. However, if our own foundation has not yet matured, then no matter how high you build on top, it may not be of much help to your own mental continuum. Therefore, we strongly advocate that every principle must be contemplated with great care and repeatedly. For example, as mentioned earlier, if the Buddha had not appeared in the world, there would be no benefit for sentient beings. On the surface, this phrase seems very simple, but in reality, can you truly develop such a firm conviction in your heart? After developing such conviction, reflect repeatedly, oh, indeed, truly, a human life is, without a doubt, extremely difficult to obtain and does not come easily. Encountering such precious Dharma teachings is indeed also extremely rare. If you have a very profound and truly comprehensive understanding of these rare principles, indeed, at this point, your mind stream has already become pliable. When your mind stream is flexible and truly pliable, it's really just like planting crops in the spring. If the land has already been properly and thoroughly tilled and prepared, then, for example, whether you plant barley or wheat, once you sow the seeds, they will mature in a very short time. But if the land has neither been properly leveled, nor thoroughly and carefully cultivated, nor even adequately and consistently watered, then a very barren and dry land, even if you sow the best seeds in the field, will they sprout? It's still very difficult. Therefore, for each principle, as we move forward from this point on, starting from now, from this moment onward, let us remember, you must repeatedly practice it in your own mind until you truly, genuinely feel it. As for other things, enter the samadhi of no thought, or observe the winds, channels, and luminous drops, the subtle channels, blood vessels, central channel, their color and thickness, just like the requirements described in the resting meditation of great perfection. We have not yet reached that level. For now, let's not talk about those things. For now, let's, for the moment, direct our attention to the basic rarity of human life. Finally, in my mind stream, I truly want to practice. If I don't practice, impermanence comes so quickly, and human life is so hard to obtain. This is not something others are saying, but if this particular idea is always present and lingering in my own mind, then I will definitely succeed in my practice in this lifetime. Therefore, we must have a firm understanding of the rarity of obtaining a human body and the rarity of the Buddha appearing in our world. Remember, as it is stated in the revered and ancient text known as the Sutra of the Compassionate Flower, it is important for us to keep these teachings in mind, reflecting on their wisdom and guidance in our daily lives, so that we may better understand and embody compassion. It is extremely rare to be born as a human being. It is extremely rare to see the Buddha come to this world. This means that being born among humans is very hard to attain. It is extremely rare to encounter the Buddha's appearance in the world. In fact, it is also, in most cases, exceptionally rare to genuinely feel truly happy about performing good deeds and to actively initiate sincere, heartfelt, and deeply meaningful good wishes. In other words, to give rise to a joyful mind toward virtuous Dharma and to make virtuous aspirations. These four things are especially rare in this world. I really, truly, indeed like this verse a lot, very much. We must always remember that being born as a human is indeed very hard to attain. Encountering the Buddha's appearance in the world is also very rare. And to give rise to a joyful mind or faith toward virtuous Dharma, as well as making great aspirations, these four are indeed extremely rare to find in this very life. I can say this easily, and after you hear it, everyone can remember it very clearly. It's easy to say. But whether you can truly, genuinely feel this way deep within your heart and mind after you leave here, well, that is, of course, quite another matter entirely, isn't it? Through the above analysis, truly, it is extremely difficult for the Buddha to come into this world. As you can see, there are so many dark eons, and it is indeed so very hard to actually encounter a truly bright eon, really. Though Buddhas appeared, the time Dharma remains in the world is so brief. So in this life, not too early and not too late, I happen to encounter the Dharma at just this time. It truly is not easy. Do you have this kind of thought? If you do, it certainly shows that you have a relatively good and thorough understanding of the preliminary practices, which is commendable. Here it says, not only when the Buddha appears in the world, if there is no teaching, then there is truly no benefit to sentient beings. Even if all the great masters who uphold the teachings are in attendance, and even if they are all gathered together at the same time, if they do not actively participate in the important activity of teaching and listening to the true Dharma, it is difficult to directly benefit sentient beings. Great monks and accomplished masters must also teach and expound the Dharma, allowing sentient beings to hear the authentic Dharma. Through such communication and interdependent conditions, they help sentient beings. Why do we say we benefit sentient beings through the Dharma? It is through teaching, expounding, and spreading the Dharma that sentient beings get benefit. As for other things, though some great monks and masters are truly remarkable, their inner realization should truly surpass everything. I often tell you this, and I truly think so in my heart as well. Like our Dharma King wish-fulfilling Jewel and others from the same era, whether in Tibetan or in Han regions, many great monks and accomplished masters have truly extraordinary inner realization. We have found many highly realized people, but for some, maybe due to vows in past lives or other cause it's hard to say, throughout their entire lives, they basically did not widely spread the Dharma. Nor did they gain many followers, such were their circumstances. In the end, when they came to this world, it seemed that their benefit to sentient beings, of course, if they hadn't come for such enlightened beings, even if they stayed in the world for a single day, they might bring a sense of harmony and happiness to the entire world. Indirectly, they certainly benefit sentient beings. But from the perspective of directly, and perhaps even more importantly, quite clearly and significantly benefiting others in a meaningful way, even those around them didn't notice their level of realization. Even those who were by their side every single day basically did not attain truly genuine realization at all. This kind of situation is quite common. So even for masters and monks, if they don't help sentient beings through the Dharma, there is essentially no difference from the Buddha not teaching at all. Sentient beings of degenerate age. Although the Dharma exists and the Buddha's teachings have not yet disappeared, we lack the conditions of having great masters and eminent monks to transmit them to us. If no one guides us, we still won't understand. It's just like now when the Department of Education has already granted permission and schools are established in various places. But if there isn't a single teacher, then in many rural areas, unfortunately, even though there are such good opportunities from above, As you can see, the children shown below may unfortunately all end up being completely illiterate. Why do you think that is the case as you look at this? Because if there isn't a single teacher to teach the curriculum, then there's nothing that can be done. It's the same principle. In today's world, we truly need some spiritual teachers. If you don't have good knowledge, don't talk about profound things like Buddhism. Even ordinary worldly skills, such as the ability to drive a car, operate machinery, or perform various types of technical work in everyday life, are included in this category. If there is no teacher to guide you, it probably won't work. For example, even painting or some very simple technical skill in the world requires a teacher. Therefore, whether in Han regions or in Tibetan regions now, in every monastery and every Buddhist organization, there must be people with strong motivation who are dedicated to benefiting sentient beings. Those who have this aspiration, who wish to liberate sentient beings and teach the Dharma, if they lack such motivation, the benefit they bring to sentient beings will still be very limited. For example, here is a story about the respected Indian master Mitrajana, who was known for his wisdom. In order to save his mother, who had been reborn in the solitary hell, he traveled a very great distance, all the way to remote Tibet. On the way, his trusted translator, unfortunately, passed away, leaving the master completely alone and wandering in the calm region. At that time, because he could not speak the language, he had no choice but to make a living by herding sheep. As a result, he was unable to widely benefit sentient beings with the true Dharma and ultimately passed away in Tibet. There are various accounts of this situation in different historical records from around the world, as documented throughout history by many. In India, Mitrajana was an exceptionally renowned, highly respected and widely admired great Pandita, who was known throughout the land. He undertook all this, indeed, in order to save his mother. His mother had been reborn inside the stove of a family and had turned into a small frog that very slowly munched on smooth stones, occasionally, from time to time, because in the lonely hell there are many sentient beings with different karmic backgrounds. Inside cliffs or within sea stones, there are many different sentient beings who have been reborn there. So his mother was mysteriously reborn inside the ancient stone of a family's old kitchen stove, and was, in time, eventually transformed into a frog somehow. Venerable Mitrajana possessed great supernatural powers, and through these powers he observed his mother, seeing she had been reborn in a lower realm there, experiencing immense suffering. Then he came to Tibet. When he arrived in Tibet, at first there was also a Pandita named Chanaremmo. Chanaremmo and Mitrajana, the two of them, came through Nepal together. When they actually reached the border area between Tibet and Nepal, at that time they brought along a translator. Just like nowadays, some lamas bring a translator with them when they go to Han regions. At that time, the translator either suddenly fell seriously ill or had diarrhea. No one really knew exactly what kind of illness it was, but in any case, he did unfortunately die on the way. Later, Pandita Chanaremmo learned some practices of transference of consciousness and was reborn as Rongzom Pandita. Venerable Mitrajana slowly made his way from Tibet to the calm region, and eventually he found the family he was truly looking for. But because there was, unfortunately, no translator at that time, even though he was indeed a great Pandita, but after arriving in Tibet, he understood no Tibetan at all. He could only ever work as a humble servant for that particular family and nothing more. And at first, that family really did, in every sense, treat him as a servant. They made him herd sheep every single day, diligently. There was a woman in that family who was, in fact, rather mean. Sometimes, on quiet mornings, when she was carefully milking the cows in the barn, she would use the old venerable Pandita as a soft cushion to sit on, making the task just a bit more comfortable and pleasant. It was very pitiful. Some people without merit would use him as a seat. In this way, a long time slowly passed. This family still believed in Buddhism. They often went out searching for various teachers. The Venerable Metakiyana thoughtfully composed several beautiful and meaningful poems while staying in the comfort and quiet of their own home. One of these poems appears in Tibetan grammar. My memory of it isn't very clear, but I do recall a small part, even if the details are a bit fuzzy. Let me try to share what I remember as best as I can. It goes like this. The bright moon in the sky is in someone's house, but not knowing exactly where the real moon is located, they search everywhere in every possible place for its reflection in the water, searching carefully, hoping to find it. Which means the true spiritual teacher, like me, an Indian Mahapandita, is already in your home, but you do not recognize my qualities. All day long, you search for other teachers who are merely like the moon's reflection in water. But they themselves are unaware of this and continue like this every day. Later, he had a very difficult life in Tibet because he could only work and serve as a loyal servant for them in their household and live like that. There are two versions. According to one version, when he was about to leave, through his extraordinary clairvoyance, he knew with absolute certainty that the mountain in their local area was, in fact, on the verge of collapsing very soon. He told the people of that village, "It would be best if you all left this place today, to all of you. Otherwise, it will be extremely dangerous. I'm afraid this is going to come down." Later, the woman of that household realized that his behavior and everything about him seemed to effortlessly surpass ordinary people, so she thoughtfully listened to him. She carefully loaded some luggage onto an ox and left with him. The other people in the village all thought, "This illiterate man who doesn't even understand Tibetan, what nonsense is he talking about?" So none of them believed him. But in the end, after everything that had happened, the mountain truly did come crashing down, and it ultimately buried the entire village and all its people beneath its massive, unyielding weight, leaving nothing but silence behind. Now, in the area of Dian Quo in Sheik, I have been to Dian Quo before in the past, and people there say the traces and remnants left behind by the mountain collapse are still, even to this day, very clearly and unmistakably visible, even now, after all this time. That's a version of the story. There's another version, a somewhat different account. At a much later point in time, one of his loyal and devoted disciples, who was known as Charozawa, he learned that Medicana was there, so he extended an invitation to him to go and spend a little more time together visiting some of the other monasteries as well. He gave teachings to a small group and then manifested parinirvana. This version also exists in other places as well. In fact, Medicana, historically speaking, lived in the period between the early and later propagation of Buddhism, around the time that marks the transition between those two significant eras in Tibetan Buddhism. He was Venerable Atisha's teacher. It is also commonly said in renowned ancient Tibetan works, such as the well-known epic of King Geza, as well as in other historical records. It is said that King Geza's instructor was also Medicana. This Pandita must have been extremely famous. Judging from some of his detailed historical accounts, it is quite clear that he was, in fact, indeed very well known. But in some historical records, it is specifically noted that when he was in Tibet, he later also seemed to have taught the Abhidhamma Kosha. He also taught some aspects of Tibetan grammar. It is said that some of the texts he hand-copied still exist in that region today. But regardless, he was extremely famous and well known to many people in India. As someone with some realization, when he arrived here, at that time, he simply did not transmit the Dharma, let alone anything else. The entire Tibetan region did not receive any benefit. Even the household where he was living at that particular time did not receive or gain any kind of benefit at all, not even the slightest advantage. Some say that it is said when he was about to leave, his host family was in fact preparing to give him some wages as a gesture of appreciation. Because he had worked as a servant there for a long time, when they tried to pay him for his help, he refused to accept any money at all. Instead, he told them that he did not want any payment, and the only thing he asked for in return was the stone. They were certainly happy to give him a stone. Then he took this heavy stone to another place, where he bathed it, offered lamps, and recited prayers to it. In the end, he liberated his mother, the frog, and countless small insects that were with it as well, carefully transferring all of them one by one to a pure and peaceful land. As for coming to Tibet, that task was already accomplished. He brought his mother to Tibet and liberated her, but aside from this, he did not in any significant way benefit many sentient beings on a large scale at all. In fact, his overall impact was actually quite limited. Later, when Venerable Atisha arrived in Tibet and heard about this, some say he heard this news, while others say there were different circumstances. When Atisha arrived at that household one day, he saw that there were poems written in Sanskrit in the house. He wondered how it could be that the writing style was just like that of his Indian master Maitripa. It was extremely similar. He wondered why. And after asking finally, he learned that his master had already come here. After arriving here, he manifested in a way that did not benefit sentient beings. At this point, Tisha could not help but sigh deeply and he said, "Alas, you Tibetans have such shallow merit. Among all the Panditas from both the eastern and western regions of India, there is not a single one who can surpass Master Maitrapa." So, speaking of India, such a vast land, both east and west, there are countless Panditas, as numerous as the stars in the sky. Among so many people, someone like Maitripa, in terms of wisdom, accomplishment, practice, and discipline, one surpasses him in any aspect. But truly, the people of Tibet have very little merit. A pandita of such caliber was even used as a cushion for milking cows. Tibetans really can be quite bad, don't you think, honestly? So at that particular time, Venerable Atisha, who was renowned for his great compassion and wisdom, was deeply pained by what had happened. Later, when Venerable Atisha was preparing to manifest parinirvana, he said, "Because the merit of the Tibetan people is rather shallow, if I pass away here, perhaps the entire land of Tibet would not be able to bear it. After careful consideration, I truly believe that I should return to India, my homeland, and then manifest parinirvana there instead." Later, some people around him said, as they saw it, the land of Tibet should surely be able to bear it after all in the end, you see. Even the incomparable Bodhisattva Pandita, who was deeply revered for his wisdom and spiritual influence, ultimately passed away in Tibet, marking a moment of great significance for his followers and the Buddhist community. Then Venerable Atisha said, "Although Bodhisattva Pandita's discipline was very pure, but for wisdom, he certainly could not surpass me. So he is really not the same as me." Later, some people said, it should still be possible, right? The incomparable Guru Padmasambhava also departed for the pure land of Odhyana from Tibet. If he was able to manifest disappearance right here in this very place, then surely, without a doubt, you could do the same as well. Then the Venerable Atisha thoughtfully replied, "Although Guru Padmasambhava was extraordinary in accomplishment, in terms of wisdom, he also certainly could not compare to me." Still not really possible. Later, I suppose some people said, then there really shouldn't be any problem at all, right? For example, someone like Maitripatha, great master we just mentioned, he was truly remarkable, passed away in Tibet. Then Venerable Atisha said, "Oh, he must have been truly extraordinary." Then, for me to manifest passing away in Tibet should be acceptable. There is also, as some people might say, such a saying. So at this particular moment in time, when Venerable Atisha was speaking in detail about this important topic, the Venerable One couldn't help himself. He put his hands together in prayer and tears streamed down his face. At that time, it was indeed true that, as a matter of fact, sometimes sentient beings' merit was very shallow, because sentient beings did not request the turning of the Dharma wheel, or the translator did not. Sometimes, truly, the language barrier is still quite often a real problem. Although some teachers are extremely remarkable and very compassionate, they simply do not understand at all. There was a lay practitioner who said, "Oh, my teacher is without a doubt extremely compassionate, truly compassionate. He always smiles warmly every time, and I am deeply moved by it. But the teacher keeps moving his mouth, and I have no idea what he's saying."
So sometimes the guru is especially compassionate. Sometimes talking to disciples isn't possible. In the past, our Guru Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, at the very beginning, we honestly didn't have any kind of simultaneous translation available at all. Dharma King Jigme Phuntsok sometimes joked in the Great Assembly Hall. Whenever all the monks burst out laughing joyfully, a few Han Chinese monks would just look around, left and right, not knowing what was being said at all. And when we translated it the next day, somehow the story just didn't seem as interesting. So at that time, it turned out that every time people laughed yesterday, sometimes the language of great accomplished masters just can't be directly communicated. This is why translators are called the eyes of the world. The reason lies here. If there truly were no translators or gurus, even though the Dharma is profound, some gurus' hidden meanings and wisdom are truly very deep. But for sentient beings in the degenerate age to fully comprehend it with their own abilities is also really quite difficult. So here it says, as great monks and virtuous teachers, honestly, without someone teaching the Dharma, it really is very difficult. I'm not sure if I've told you this before. But in our monastery, there is someone called Khenpo Laksu who is well known. His practice is truly excellent, over 80 years old as of last year. It seems that people in our monastery didn't pay particularly much special attention to him, and no one sought teachings from him. I heard from others that when he was young, he often traveled very far, studied under gurus, and mastered the Buddhist teachings. Later, I invited him to teach, though I didn't have time to listen myself. But I asked some of the monastics in our monastery and had them listen to the preliminary practices. The Paliul tradition has a concise version of the Ngondro preliminary practices. The transmission of this preliminary practice is also quite rare, so in order to preserve this lineage, I requested some of the ordained monks to go there and listen. It was a forced arrangement. I had the teacher give the teachings to the class, and after he finished teaching, the effects of what he taught continued for approximately about a month. Now, he is over 80 years old and can barely see any text. At that time, we printed especially large characters, and he would basically just glance over the words in front of him. But in his mind, everything was perfectly clear. Sometimes I use this teaching, sometimes I use that teaching. Later, I listened to a recording and was very surprised. Such a person in our monastery had always just quietly remained there, seemingly unnoticed. After he just finished speaking, he sent me a message to express his deep gratitude. He said that this time, after waiting for so long, he finally had an opportunity to teach them the Dharma. Usually he wants to talk about the Dharma like preliminary practices and entering the path. But unfortunately, I just can't seem to find anyone. When he saw the young monks in the monastery, he noticed that many of their behaviors were not in accordance with the Dharma. He felt he should teach them, but none of them would come to listen. Sometimes he would tell them, if any of you are interested, I don't even need to talk about the more profound teachings, but when it comes to mind training and the Mahayana bodhicitta, I've spent my life practicing here, so I do have some experience, and I can pass it on to you. But none of those young monks would come to listen at all to what was being said. Hearing this, I felt that in this world there are likely many old practitioners like him. Within their mental continuum, they possess some compassion and loving kindness and reach admirable states. But if there is no good communication between people, what do we often end up following? It's those who speak in a very beautiful and flowery way, but whose words are empty. In reality, they have no practice or realization. Yet such people, as it turns out, have a great many disciples around them, whereas before, those with genuine practice and realization, very few still seek the authentic Dharma. If no one seeks Dharma masters and teachers, on the surface seem ordinary people and nothing can be done. I heard a recording, since now, for those over 80, generally speaking, perhaps many people, by the time they are over 80, have forgotten the Dharma teachings. But just like our precious Guru Jigme from in the past, even when he was close to passing away, in his 70s at that time, sometimes he would continuously and repeatedly cite many scriptural and experiential proofs. At that time, some government officials around us who did not believe in Buddhism listened, and they said, "This Dharma king uses such an extraordinary wealth of scriptural references," as they observed. He memorized all of them, so impressive, so astonishing. They all had different feelings about it. Truly, some seasoned practitioners are like this, because their whole lives are not like ours today. We read a lot, listen a lot, and think a lot. All our energy every day is spent on external things that are meaningless. We are not focused. We don't devote all our time to memorizing Buddhist scriptures and treatises. This may be, I think, in my mind, there is a jumble of miscellaneous knowledge and some popular worldly songs. Disco, techno, and a wide variety of other similar styles and genres, all of which fall under the category of these so-called, you can sing them at any time, really, without any problem. But it is important to note that the truly profound principles of the Dharma may not necessarily become immediately apparent or manifest themselves clearly. That's why encountering the Dharma in our lives, especially meeting a truly genuine and authentic teacher, this is really important. If the teachings are present but there is no teacher, then there's nothing that can be done. However, if practitioners do happen to speak different languages, then translators are also, in fact, required. Sometimes when I translate, others say, "You translate too much." But my mind remains very pure. Deep down, I think, right now, the Dharma truly is in the era of the degenerate age. If we wholeheartedly produce a good translation, then even when we leave this world, perhaps such a lineage and such Dharma principles will be very beneficial. We ourselves can gain great benefit from these Dharma texts for our own benefit. Generations or people from different backgrounds will also receive some benefit. Even if it's just a little benefit, our efforts are still really worthwhile. So sometimes, when I observe my own mind, my mind is relatively pure, no matter what others say, as long as I truly do my very best and contribute, even if just a little, to the Dharma in this brief lifetime, I think it's not in vain, at least for me. Therefore, everyone should always remember and keep in mind the true importance and significance of great masters and accomplished teachers who are dwelling and residing in this world. And also that it is very important to form a connection with the Dharma yourself. Now, Shakyamuni Buddha has successively turned the Dharma wheel 3 times. The Four Noble Truths, the formless Dharma wheel, and the discriminating Dharma wheel. In response to beings' capacities, the Buddha showed forms, just as described later, as we will see in detail in the Great Chariot commentary. The Buddha manifested various forms according to beings' needs to guide sentient beings. Through the 9 vehicles which are commonly and traditionally recognized as including the Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddha, and Bodhisattva vehicles of the Sutrayana, among others, in the Vajrayana, the Kriyacharya and Yoga Tantras, and the Supreme Vajrayanas, Maha Anu and Ati, the 9 vehicles. Through 9 vehicles, the Buddha enabled the mental continuums of countless sentient beings to first mature through empowerment and then attain liberation through the transmission of teachings. Countless sentient beings saved. Therefore, the second condition that Buddha has already taught the Dhammas, as we have previously discussed, being completely and thoroughly fulfilled and satisfied. Not only did the Buddha teach the Dhamma, but spiritual teachers also taught. This condition has already been met, so everyone should give rise to a sense of joy. Next, we will discuss the third condition, the Dhamma remaining in the world. Although the Buddha has already taught the Dharma, if the period during which the holy teachings remain in the world has ended, then if the authentic Dharma has already disappeared, it would be no different from a dark eon. Even though the Dharma exists in the world, the time during which the Dharma remains is still very brief. If both the realization of the Dharma and the teachings themselves are gone, it is like an age of darkness. Just like now, even today, the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, in just a few thousand more years, if nothing changes, it will before too long soon be gone, essentially. There will be such a long period between now and the appearance of Maitreya Buddha. At that time, although we are, as is commonly known, indeed born in the fortunate aeon, it is no different from a dark age. Because the previous Buddha has already entered parinirvana, and the teachings have also completely disappeared as a result, while the next Buddha, who is yet to come, has not yet appeared. So the holy teachings of the previous Buddha have already ended, and the holy teachings of the next Buddha have not yet arisen. This is called the era when the holy teachings are absent, and it is truly frightening. Indeed, Dharma friends, you must contemplate this with utmost care over and over again. It was certainly not easy at all for us to come to this world, to this place at this particular time. Sometimes, when we often see the busy, bustling crowds on the street going about their daily lives, none practicing virtuous deeds, we truly feel great compassion for them. It is so pitiable. This time we have such a truly precious opportunity. The doors to the Dharma remain open. For a long time now, those with the right conditions may enter the gates of Buddhism. But for those without such karmic connections, there is nothing that can be done this time either. If during this brief lifetime we do not engage in study and practice, when will there be another opportunity? It is truly, truly extremely difficult. During this period, it is the era when the holy teachings are absent. At that time, except for the rare emergence of solitary realizers in pure lands with the right merit and conditions, apart from this, there is no such thing as teaching, listening, practicing, etc. Such circumstances, in fact, simply do not exist. Following previous Buddha's parinirvana before next Buddha comes, during this interval, which refers to a particular period within the cycle of existence, it is occasionally the case that a Pratyeka Buddha solitary enlightened being who attains realization independently will appear, just as it is described. If the Buddha does not appear in the world and the Shravakas have already passed away, the wisdom of the Pratyeka Buddhas arises without dependence. In this way, when the Buddha has not appeared in the world and the Shravakas have long since entered the state of cessation, at this time, the Pratyeka Buddhas, the intermediate or solitary Buddhas, although the Pratyeka Buddha comes to this world through practicing the 12 links of dependent origination in past lives, in this very life, within a single meditation session, he attains the fruition of a noble being. Then, relying on his body, he manifests various miracles, such as producing fire and emitting light, to guide and free a few sentient beings with whom he has karmic ties. But this scope is limited. Are we sentient beings liberated by a Pratyeka Buddha? No one can be certain of this because the number is very small. Therefore, apart from this, there truly is nothing else in between in any possible way whatsoever. So sometimes when we look at history, we see that the period of the Buddha's teachings was so brief. For those who do not believe in Buddhism, if they practice Buddhist teachings, within this eon, there are still many, many truly empty eons in between. During those times, there is no Buddhism at all. If we are reborn in such a period, then even the names of the Dharma and the three jewels would be unheard of. Therefore, we should reflect on this reasoning again and again. Oh, this time I must practice. This kind of opportunity is, quite honestly, truly very, very rare. Such a firm conviction will arise in everyone's heart. This is a kind of state of spiritual practice. What do we see today when we look around us in our everyday lives, each and every day? Some people say, I'm practicing Tummo now and my navel feels warm. I think these things are not important. Whether you feel hot or cold, whether there is energy or light at the top of your head, none of these really matter. We see that light bulbs are very bright, but in fact, that's not a sign of realization either. In summer, there are mirages, water and mist, lots of things that shine or emit vapor. None of these are very important. But nowadays, people aren't like this. They insist on having some kind of sign appear. If a sign shows they think it's accomplishment, to truly generate definitive understanding of the principle that human life is precious and rare, they don't consider that to be a sign of realization. So in the future, as we move ahead, we need to carefully change our approach in order to adapt and truly practice in a way that brings about genuine spiritual responses during the preliminary practices of Buddhism. This is very important, indeed. Take, for example, the current holy teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. According to the profound intent of Samantabhadra, the period of fruition lasts 500 years. Practice lasts 500 years. Teaching lasts 500 years. The period of merely maintaining the outer form lasts 500 years, totaling 50 years. The time that Buddhism lasts in the world is not very long. Although the duration of Buddhism's presence in the world, for example, as stated in the Khandagarbha Sutra, it is 2,500 years. Furthermore, in the Bhadrakalpika Sutra, it states, the teaching period is 1,500 years, the true Dharma period is 500 years, and the semblance period is 1,000 years. There are such explanations as well, but regardless, many sutras and treatises offer different accounts. But generally speaking, according to the Abhidhammakosa, is more widely accepted in the world and is recognized by everyone. According to the Abhidhammakosa, the entire period of Shakyamuni Buddha's Dharma, as it is traditionally understood and recounted, is said to last for a total duration of approximately 5,000 years. For example, in the world, the former World Fellowship of Buddhists, the Buddhist calendar they promoted shows this year's Buddhist year, 2,553, which is now more widely recognized in the world and is also used by the Theravada tradition. This view is very consistent with the Abhidhammakosa. Some other different views on the period of the teachings. Some are different. For example, some Dharma masters in the Han region, for instance, say, true Dharma, 10 semblance, 10 degenerate, 10 years. There are such statements as well. Additionally, in Tibet, schools like the Phurba tradition, the Sakya school, and the Gelug schools, Khedrup-J, each have their own viewpoints, and many of these are also quite different. But in Tibet, the Phurba school's explanation is generally more widely accepted. In fact, as I just mentioned earlier on, indeed, as we all know in the world today, the Theravada viewpoint is generally considered well-founded. This is consistent with the view of the Abhidhammakosa. Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings can be called the sacred teachings of Samantabhadra's secret intention. Why is it called Samantabhadra's secret intention? Samantabhadra's incarnation, Samantabhadra's body, Snow Sea Tathagata, Vairocana Buddha. Within the treasure vase they hold, there is a wish-fulfilling tree, or a Bodhi tree. The Bodhi tree has 25 layers of leaves. The 13th layer is precisely the Saha world of Shakyamuni Buddha as it exists now. As one might expect, it happens to correspond exactly to the heart center of Vairocana Buddha. Therefore, Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings can be called the teachings of Samantabhadra's secret intention. Why are they called the teachings of Samantabhadra's secret intention? Because they are precisely aligned with the secret intention of Vairocana Buddha, who is the magical manifestation of Samantabhadra Tathagata. According to conventional calculation, the fruition phase of such teachings lasts for 500 years. Each phase lasts 500 years, for a total of 10 such periods. First, you will attain the state of an arhat. Then, after achieving this state, you will not return for a full 500 years, and after that long period, you will return once. In the next 500 years, more people attain stream entry. This is commonly referred to as the 500-year fruition phase, which is also known as the fruition period. After that comes the practice phase, which generally refers to the 3 trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom, as taught in Buddhist tradition, because then sentient beings in those 500 years, mainly, most people focus on the training in morality. Then the trainings in concentration and wisdom each last for a period of 500 years, making another one 500 years. The teaching phase also lasts 500 years, which refers to the Tripitaka. During that time period, specifically in the first 500 years, the main focus is primarily on studying and learning from the Sutra Pitaka, which contains the teachings and scriptures. Next 500 years, Vinaya Pitaka. Following 500 years, Abhidharma Pitaka. This is main one. Many people in the final 500 years, people maintain appearances. True teachings and realization like monastic practice and attainment are no longer present. Monastics only maintain some outward appearances. But at that time, even these appearances are basically very difficult to preserve in the world. For example, when monks try to shave their heads, the blade simply cannot cut the hair, because by then the blessings of sentient beings have been exhausted. If the color of the Kasaya robe is supposed to be reddish yellow, no matter how much dye is used, it just won't take. There are such cases. In the end, it is the era of mere appearance. Some Dharma teachers say that even the semblance period has passed and we are now in the degenerate age. But in our view, it is more accurate to follow the explanation in the Abhidhammakosa. Why is that? Because at beginning in the era of fruition, Buddha in the world, or soon after his passing, people attained realization, looking at the Karmashataka and Dhammamukha Sutras and many other scriptures. When Buddha taught Dharma, they would reach arhatship or stream entry. It was incredibly fast. A Dharma friend asked why it was easy to attain realization back then. He said, I also want to attain arhatship right away. Could you please transmit to me a teaching on the Four Noble Truths? I replied. That's definitely not possible now. This is not the era of fruition. After another 500 years, it became the era of practice. People focused on discipline, concentration, and wisdom. We can see this from the previous generations. For example, during the Tang dynasty, when I read biographies of eminent monks Han, historical accounts, Tibet, I feel in Han region, Chan Buddhism and Pure Land Buddhism, there were many accomplished practitioners, a great many. The same was true in Tibet, such as within the Nyingma school and many other traditions. There were especially many people who attained the rainbow body or who ascended to pure lands. Now, as we increasingly enter the degenerate age and approach the time of formalization, fewer and fewer people achieve realization. However, we have not yet truly entered the era of mere forms, since the teachings still remain. Because people continue to uphold by maintaining respect for and following the teachings of the sutras, Vinaya, and treatises, and because they listen attentively to these teachings and make efforts to study, and if we practice now, it is entirely possible for compassion and bodhicitta to arise in our mental continuum. Therefore, the true degenerate age has not yet, after all, truly arrived. Of course, the whole world, with the beings of the auspicious aeon, or those who lived during the Buddha's time, regarding spiritual capacity, we are still far inferior. So we must understand that there is a total span of 5,000 years, and now we have reached 3,500, or nearly 4,000 years. This is according to the calculation method of the Purba school. For 5,000 years, Shakyamuni Buddha teachings last. Now, more than 3,500 years have already passed, and the period for practice has ended. During the dispensation, or nearly 4,000 years, if it reaches 4,000 years, there will still be 500 years left for the Dharma to remain. After that, it will basically be gone. So we actually came into this world exactly 500 years ago. If we were to come to this world after a few more dynasties, I'm afraid Buddhism would not be like this anymore. It truly would not be the same. So right now, in the very midst of our long journey through samsara, this time we have unexpectedly encountered these truly important teachings. Those with wisdom might think in their hearts that this is indeed truly not at all easy to come by, as one might expect. Even though right now, at this very moment, as we speak, right here and now, right now, the times, sentient beings, lifespans, views, afflictions, all 5 impurities are at their peak, the Dharma and realization have not truly disappeared just yet. They still remain, still present in this world, continuing on. They still exist in this world. This shows that the holy teachings and the authentic Dharma are still fully present. Although sentient beings now find themselves living in a truly degenerate age of the 5 impurities, currently, First, there is the impurity of time, because in this era, sentient beings' wealth is unstable. Day and night, all kinds of inevitable, unexpected crises are always arising. One moment it's called a global economic crisis, sometimes even referred to as a worldwide downturn. The next it's a financial storm, and so on. Every day it's either a raging wind or a torrential downpour. Although on the surface people seem to have some bubble-like benefits in the economy, in reality this is unstable, and after a while it is very likely that people will return to the conditions of the 1950s or something similar. Much of the world's wealth is as fleeting as dew in the early morning, appearing for a short while before it fades away, and all of it is unstable, never remaining the same for long. This is what is called the impurity of time. Next is the impurity of sentient beings. The bodies of sentient beings and their overall merit are gradually diminishing. In the time of the Buddha, or even earlier, people's height and physical strength were both truly excellent and, in fact, remarkably impressive. But now, some Dharma friends find their health worsening year after year. In winter, my shortness of breath tends to get worse. And it's the same situation when climbing mountains. 2 years ago, when I spent winter at Larunga Buddhist Academy, I had no problem. But now, because the world is becoming more and more impure, I can't do it anymore. I can't stay there in winter. This clearly illustrates, in fact, what is meant by the impurity of sentient beings. Then the lifespan is turbid. When the Buddha was alive, people lived for 100 years. But now, when someone reaches 100 years old, there are people who are 100 years old here. A lot of journalists rush with their cameras and camcorders and start snapping photos non-stop. Because someone living to 100 is seen as something extraordinary, almost like a freak. Nowadays, when we typically reach 50 or 60 years old in our lives, we already feel that perhaps it's time to pass away and start preparing for it. So this is what is meant by the impurity of lifespan. In the past, people lived for 20,000 or even 80,000 years. People truly lived much longer in this world. But good times never last, and all too soon, sentient beings are inevitably experiencing the impurity and limitations of lifespan. The turbidity of lifespan is like this: the impurity of views. Some treatises say the virtuous and disciplined minds of monastics are increasingly and steadily deteriorating. In the distant past, monastics would conscientiously and diligently uphold the precepts with great care and attention. 3 trainings of discipline, concentration, and wisdom kept. But now things have indeed changed. There is a Buddhist scripture called the Sutra on Resolving Doubts about the Age of Dharma Images, which also discusses many such matters. For example, the Buddha said, "Good man, 1,000 years after my extinction, evil Dharma will gradually rise." This means that 1,000 years after the Buddha's passing, many signs of a degenerate age will appear even among monastics. Some monastics don't practice meditation, yet they believe their practice is good. They boast about their meditation practice in front of others, even though they have no real understanding of the teachings and cannot explain Buddha's scriptures. Yet, quite often, in many cases, they make things up or casually offer their own interpretations from their own perspective, and even think that their explanations are brilliant. This is how it is. There are also bhikkhus in the degenerate age who engage in business and so on. Monastics lose their virtuous intentions. This is called the impurity of views. Lay people lose their commitment to practicing good deeds in their daily lives. This is called the impurity of afflictions. Of course, there may be different ways to interpret this, but for now, we will explain it in this way, for the time being. Even though the 5 impurities and the evil world are rampant, the teachings and realization of the Dharma have not disappeared. Therefore, we have indeed encountered a time when the authentic Dharma is still present. We must make sure to practice virtuous deeds ourselves. In fact, as long as each person really makes effective use of their available time, with enough effort, anyone can definitely do it. This afternoon, as the sun cast a gentle light through the windows, a Tibetan Lama, who is now 79 years old and carries with him the wisdom of many decades, came to visit us. His presence, he used to be a friend of my father's, and later on he eventually became a monk. He told me about his experiences, roughly 10 or 20 years of spiritual practice. By yesterday, he had already recited the Avalokiteshvara mantra 300 million times. Today, right here in front of me, he made a solemn vow to recite another 100 million times. He said that after the new year has passed, he will be celebrating his 80th birthday, which is a significant milestone for him. He's looking forward to this new chapter in his life. How many years to recite the mantra 300 times? He said it took exactly 17 years. During those 17 years, sometimes when he recited extra, he would do 110 or 100 recitations a day. Sometimes he would go to Lhasa or other places but he had little contact with other people. He recited Samantabhadra aspiration noble deeds many times. He shared a lot, and he's a genuine person. Back in my hometown of Luhua, he was a very well-known person in the secular world. My father often talked about some of his past stories, going to war, killing yaks, stealing, a lot of stories like that, which I must say left a deep impression on me as well. But he also felt he had done too many bad things when he was young. He said there wasn't a single evil deed he hadn't done. Basically, when he was actually quite young, he didn't really believe in karma either. 20 years ago, met a spiritual teacher. Later, he also met our Guru Jigme Phuntsok. He was guided to repent and recite Avalokiteshvara mantra. In the end, he completed 300 million recitations, and today he has vowed to recite another 100 million. I truly feel that the power of the human mind is indeed extraordinary. Some people made negative karma, but if they start to diligently practice now, there shouldn't be any major problems. I hope that everyone present here, after genuinely reflecting on the above analysis, will realize how rare and precious the Buddha's teachings are. Even if teachings are given, it's rarer for Dharma to remain. But now all favorable conditions are present for us. There may be some minor favorable conditions that are lacking, like not being able to buy vegetables today. Or when I was cooking, the gas cylinder, quite unexpectedly, just ran out of gas. These are minor obstacles, but some people see them as major ones. They think, I'm facing obstacles. Why are there so many? Because these past few days, I just can't get the things I need. Because these past few days, things just keep happening at home, one after another. These are all relatively minor obstacles. The real issue would be if Buddhism didn't exist, if Buddhism had disappeared. In this way, we come into this world, the world would be shrouded in darkness without any meaning. But that's not the case. The light of Buddhism still exists. So if we don't receive it, it's as if we are like blind people. It would be very difficult. We should truly accept the sunlight of Buddhism ourselves. And in the remaining years of our lives, we need both to study and contemplate, as well as to practice. Only in this way can we attain a meaningful human life. We'll stop here.
Bandara Badna Sodargye Bandara Badna Sodargye Bandara Badna Sodargye